There is a myth that I want to bust for HR in this episode. The myth is getting a seat at the table is the goal. It's not. Having a seat at the table doesn't mean anything if you don't speak the language that's being spoken in the room. Welcome to the channel. I am Trent, the human capitalist. I've noticed that there's a big difference between HR business practices and how business actually gets done. I've spent over 20 years in HR helping the C-suite rebuild their organization while the world around them shifted. I've designed this channel to be an intelligence briefing on the business of people. So, if you're a CEO, board member, or a CHRO looking for the signal in the noise, welcome to the channel. Now, let's get to work. All right, welcome back to the CHRO mini-series where we are discussing the 5 mindsets that are going to be needed in order to transform HR to remain relevant in the age of AI. In this episode, I want to talk about the Chief Operating Officer or the COO mindset. It's a way of seeing business not as a collection of departments, but as value creation machine and understanding exactly where and how your people decisions drive that machine forward. So here's the framing for the episode. The most effective CHROs that I've worked with and worked for, they don't just have a seat at the table. They have a point of view about enterprise value. They can walk into a room with the CEO, CFO, or any other of the C-suite and answer the question, how does your people strategy actually accelerate our ability as an organization to create value? Not in HR terms, but in business terms. Now, the COO mindset means that you see every talent decision through the lens of value creation, and you connect your workforce strategy to the metrics that actually move the business. So let's break down what that looks like. Most CHROs are smart and capable and deeply committed to the workforce. So why do so many of them feel like they're outside of the growth conversation or outside of the room whenever major decisions are being discussed? It's not a competence gap, it's a fluency gap. When the CEO is talking about entering a new market, the COO is thinking about operational capacity. The CFO is running a scenario of financial models and margin impact in their head. The CIO is thinking of all the technical implications that are going to be needed for this expansion. And most CHROs, well, most of the time they're thinking about workforce planning in isolation. Headcount, attrition, engagement scores, recruiting plans. What they're missing is that the language of the C-suite is enterprise value, revenue, margin, risk-adjusted returns, capital allocation, all of it. If you can't translate your people strategy into the language that's being spoken in the room, you're always going to be responding to strategy rather than actually shaping it. And look, this is just not my observation or having a chip on my shoulder about CHROs. There's actually data to back it up. Gartner's research on CHRO priorities found that only 30% of HR leaders report a clear line of sight between their human capital investments and actual business outcomes. That means the majority are making people decisions without a reliable value creation model to help back them up. So what this means in practice is that businesses aren't asking HR to be a know-it-all. It doesn't need the CHRO to become a shadow of the CFO or suddenly master derivative accounting. What it needs is a CHRO who understands value creation at every stage of the business and can bring a structured framework for connecting human capital decisions to those key value drivers. And this is where my human capitalist value of work matrix comes in. The matrix maps every people decision against value stages of the business: acquire, develop, deploy, and optimize. And at each stage, the CHRO should be able to answer, what is the workforce doing to create value here? What's the cost? What's the risk? And what's the return? When you bring that kind of structured thinking into the room, you stop being an HR leader. You start becoming a value driver. When I've been asked my approach to HR or who my HR role model was, it wasn't anybody real. It was actually a character on Billions. Her name was Wendy Rhoades. She is the in-house performance coach and psychiatrist at Axe Capital, but she is the exact type of modern CHRO and one that has all of these mindsets that we should aspire to be. Now, here's what Wendy does that most HR leaders don't. She knows the business, not just the people, the business. She understands the trade. She understands the risk, the P&L pressure on everyone's desk. And she knows what it costs the firm whenever a top performer can't execute, and she can quantify that in language that the CEO respects and listens to. That's the COO mindset in action. She didn't ask for permission to be in the room. She earned it by demonstrating that her insight had a direct, measurable connection to enterprise value. She knows everyone in that organization, what makes them tick, what shuts them down, what drives peak performance. And then she translates all of that through one lens. What is this costing us, or what is this making us? So, what's the lesson for CHROs? You don't earn a seat in the room by being the people expert. You earn it by showing how your understanding of people directly maps to enterprise value creation or destruction. Wendy isn't just a therapist who happens to work at a hedge fund. She's a performance asset who happens to use therapeutic tools. That reframe is everything. So, what does the COO mindset actually look like in practice? I've broken it down into 4 capabilities, all of them anchored in the same North Star: driving enterprise value. Are you tired of me saying it yet? First capability is fluency. You need to understand not just the financial statements, but how your company creates, captures, and compounds value. Where is value actually generated? Is it in R&D? Is it in customer acquisition? Or is it just in operational efficiency? If you can't answer those questions without calling the CFO, this is where you need to start. Capability 2 is value chain integration. This is the ability to see HR decisions not as standalone choices, but as interventions within that value chain. When you make a hiring decision, you're affecting capacity at a specific value stage. When you design a development program, you're investing in the future of value creation. And when you restructure, you're reallocating value generating capacity across the enterprise. Cross functional credibility is built when your peers see that your recommendations are anchored in their value drivers, not just a headcount model or something that you heard at the latest HR conference. All right, capability 3 is workforce value architecture. It's about architecting your workforce to maximize value output at every stage of the business. The CHRO who can map their workforce design to the company's current value stage will always be one that needs to be in the room. And the fourth capability is trade off navigation. And this is the hardest one, and it's also the most important. The COO mindset means that you're not always advocating for the workforce. Sometimes you're the one that has to say, this investment in people won't drive the return that we need at this particular stage. Or the workforce costs we're carrying is a competitive liability, and here's how we need to address it. Strategic tension management means that you can hold the tension between what's right for the employees and what's required for enterprise value creation and navigate that tension with credibility and clarity among your peers. That's what gets you a seat at the table, and that's what gets you invited back. So here's what you can do this week to start developing that COO mindset. First step is learn the P&L and map your workforce strategies against it. Not just headcount cost, break it down by function, by value stage, by return. Where's your workforce investment generating the highest return? And where's the drag? You should be able to answer that question without having to call the CFO. All right, number 2, get in those cross-functional meetings. I've said this in several of the episodes so far, but you need to get out of HR and start spending more time with your internal client. You're not to present, not to deliver an HR update. You're just there to listen, to learn the language, and to identify one workforce implication that no one else in the room is thinking about. Then bring it back as a data backed point of view. All right, number 3 is map out how to rethink, reskill, and redeploy your workforce. This is a COO level strategic play right now. Identify the specific roles in your organization that AI will disrupt in the next 18 to 24 months. Not in the abstract, but specifically. And then map which employees can be reskilled for higher value work, which roles need to be fundamentally designed, and what a real redeployment pathway looks like for the people that are caught in the middle. Now, this is not a workforce planning exercise. This is an enterprise value protection strategy. The companies that build a workforce transformation plan around AI aren't just managing risk, they're creating a competitive advantage. And the CHRO who walks into the CEO's office with a plan that isn't HR anymore Well, they become a strategic operator. The COO mindset is all about perspective, the belief that every people decision is a value decision, and that the CHRO who can demonstrate that will always have a seat, a voice, and a point of view that the rest of the C suite cannot afford to ignore. On the next episode, we're going to finish our five mindsets and start talking about the coach, not the soft skill version, not the let's talk about your feelings version. This is a high stake executive coach that handles performance and really starts with the C suite. I'm Trent Cotton, your human capitalist. Remember to invest in yourself because no one's going to do it quite like you do.